everyone. Welcome to the Legislative Report. I'm John Banville. Our guest this week is Senator Joe Robach. Senator Robach, I want to thank you very much for making time with us.
I always appreciate this opportunity to, grasp, to let the folks know back in Rochester and at home what's going on here in the Capitol and some of the issues that face us and what's going on. So happy to be here.
We have discussed some of the issues in the district, but I'd like to focus on Albany. In the past, you have taken on the leaders of both houses of the legislature as well as the governor in order to try to create a on-time state budget that is fair and responsible. I'd like your opinion on what has been happening with the state budget as it stands now.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. This year in particular, clearly no one would say by any stretch of the imagination that the state legislature has run optimally. But interestingly enough, after a historic fight in the Assembly in my old days, years back with Sheldon Silver, no matter who the governor has been, we finally made some changes a couple years ago into law on reforming the budget process, which Democrats and Republicans alike all hailed as the right direction. Good government groups, League of Women Voters, others said how great it was, and I was very happy to be at the forefront of getting that. I thought there were things that should always happen, and really all they said is the governor had to give his projection at an earlier date, get the ball rolling, start the amendment period, and then the legislature had to submit versions or resolutions of their budget, and then the very, very important part to opening up government, making it more transparent, going to conference committees with rank and file members of the legislature, somewhat empowered on these panels, and even more importantly, in an open room, any media from all across the state could be there, members of the community, voters, whether they're from Long Island to Grand Island, from Rochester to Poughkeepsie, wherever they wanted to go, they could come in the room and we could really highlight what the challenges are, what the budget issues are, broken down into categories, what the holdups might be on the budget, what things cost, all the above. A very, very important part, not only to hash out the challenges of making a budget, but also more importantly, and maybe most importantly, letting our constituents and the public really know what our positions were on things, again, whether it was as an individual or as a party. That became the law of the land several years ago. We've used that process a little bit, and even before it became a law, and for the first time in several years, we're having budgets done on time. Then came last year, where for the first time ever, we had three leaders, all the same party, a one-party government ruling, which I don't think is good. I'll tip my hand, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And every leader in the process, all being from New York City. While the budget got done relatively on time, they circumvented conference committees. The outcome was atrocious. $8 billion in new taxes and fees, a 9% increase in spending, and people in the public asking, well, why didn't we get more debate on why we didn't cut this, or why we cut libraries, or people with disabilities, why healthcare was cut this way, not uniformly across the board. Those kinds of questions really were never answered in a public venue with members of both parties and committees discussing it. Roll it to this year. Now we're a little bit over the budget deadline. We've still yet to go to those conference committees. And again, technically, not even technically, literally, those leaders are in violation of the very law they passed and supported to get a budget done on time. So this is one where, not my opinion, when the process changed, and you'd think, who wouldn't be for conference committees, a more transparent, open budget for the public? We got a budget relatively on time. It doesn't make our choices necessarily any easier or the job less challenging, but it does seem to bear much better results and clearly lets the public in on the decision-making process. So someone can't go in one room and say one thing and then go in another room and say something else. The position is now staked out publicly. So I continue to ask the leader in my house, in my case, Mr. Sampson and Mr. Malcolm Smith, to start utilizing these conference committees. Brian Kolb, who is the minority leader in the Assembly and not far represents part of Monroe County, has also been doing that along with several others, especially in upstate where timeliness and openness of a budget seems to matter. And I will always fight that New York City mentality that the timeliness of the budget doesn't matter, just that we get it done eventually in the right way. That's all that counts. While there's certainly content is important, the decisions we have to make will be no less complicated or easier in April, May, or God knows, even strung out any further than they will be now. And I do think on any job, people expect them to go to work, get their job done, and do it in a timely fashion. I think we got to lead by example, follow the law that says conference committees, and really buckle down and try and get this budget done.